Okay, pull out a piece of paper, write your name on it, put today's date on it, label it quadratic forms, and then break the page into 3 different sections. First section, write down everything you remember about standard form. Second section, write down everything you remember about vertex form. Third section, write down everything you remember about intercept form. Pause the video, take about 5 minutes max, write everything you know down, set it aside. You'll be turning it into me, and then unpause the video at the end of 5 minutes. Okay, you should have written everything down, set it aside. Now you've got the set of notes out. Let's start filling it in. And so on this, everything we should know about a standard vertex and intercept form. Notice they all have an A. A tells us whether it opens up or down, whether it has a minimum, it opens up, or a maximum, opens down, and whether it is narrow, stretches vertically, is wide, shrinks vertically, or is the same width as the parent function. The axis of symmetry for standard form is x equals negative b over 2a. For the vertex form, it's just x equals a, and for intercept form, we take the 2 zeros and find the average of them, so p plus q divided by 2. Right there, axis of symmetry tells you the x value of all of the vertexes, or it tells you the x value of the vertex no matter what form it is. So the vertex for standard, our x value is negative b over 2a, and then our y value is f of that value. So what that means is plug that x value in for all the x's, and then simplify, get you your y. For vertex form, it's just the ordered pair hk. For intercept form, like standard form, you got to take that p plus q divided by 2, take that number, plug it in for the x's, and then simplify, get you your y. For the zeros with the x-intercepts, you have to factor and write it in intercept form, or you have to write it in standard form if it's in vertex form and then factor it. And intercept form tells you that the x-intercepts are p, 0 and q, 0. Now, zero product property, if a times b equals 0, then either a equals 0 or b equals 0, or they both equal 0. So solve by factoring. First, move all the terms to one side of the equation, making the other side 0. Factor or rewrite the other side of the equation as multiplication. Excuse me, and then apply the zero product property. What does that look like? Well, here's our first example, x squared plus 18 equals 9x. Move the 9x back to the left-hand side. That gets us x squared minus 9x plus 18 equals 0. Factor, so put down 2 blank sets of parentheses. X has to go up front in each. Solve our x puzzle. What times what is 18? That adds up to negative 9. Well, right there tells me they both have to be negative because it's a positive 18 but a negative 9. And 3 and 6 add up to 9 and multiply to get 18. And they're both going to be negative. So that means we take x minus 3, set it equal to 0, and x minus 6, set it equal to 0. Solve both of those. X equals 3 or x equals 6 would be our x-intercepts. 2x squared plus 6x equals negative 4. Again, add the 4 to both sides. And then start factoring. They're all divisible by 2, so I'm going to put a 2 down, and then that leaves x squared plus 3x plus 2. Then factor what's inside. So still got the 2 up front. To get x squared, x times x goes up front in each set of parentheses. The only factors of 2 that I know are 1 and 2. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. And everything should be plus. So that means x equals negative 1 or x equals negative 2. Now simplifying, we're skipping down to simplifying square roots because we need that to solve with square roots. So first thing, just kind of reviewing, factor the number if it is negative, always factor out a negative 1. Circle pairs of the same factor. For each pair of factors, put 1 on the outside of the radical. And by definition, the square root of negative 1 is I. It's an imaginary square root. Yes, that's an actual type of number. So our example, square root of negative 98. Well, first off, I can break negative 98 into negative 1 times 98. 98 is 2 times 49. And 49 is 7 times 7. So start circling my pairs. I got 2 7s. So I'm going to put a 7 on the outside, and then I can also circle -1, because by definition that's going to be I on the outside of the square root. So that simplifies to 7I square root of 2. That means square root of 98 would just be 7 root 2. Square root of -196, well, first -1 times 196. And let's see, 4 goes into that. So that would be -1 times 4 times 49. 4 is 2 times 2, and we already know 49 is 7 times 7. So can circle the 2 2's, the 2 7's, and circle the -1. So I get to put a 7 and a 2 on the outside. That's 14, and an I for the -1. So the square root of -196 is 14I. Square root of 125, well, 125 is 5 times 25. 5 is 5 times 5. I got a pair of 5s, so that simplifies to 5 root 5. 256, well, let's see, that's 4 times 64. 64 is 8 times 8. And 8 I can break down into 4 times 2 and 4 times 2, so I'm going to rearrange that, put the 2's at the end. And so I can circle 2 2's, circle 2 4's, and 4 is a perfect square also, so I'm just going to circle it. So it means for the square root of 4, I get to put a 2 on the outside. For the 2 4's, I get to put a 4 on the outside. For the 2 2's, I get to put a 2 on the outside. And multiply all that together, we get 16. Now, to solve with square roots, works with quadratic equations in 0 equals a times x minus h quantity squared plus k, so vertex form, or in 0 equals ax squared plus k form. That means there's no middle x term. You isolate the whatever's squared, you take the square root of both sides, don't forget both answers, positive and negative, and finish solving for x. So here's our first one, x plus 3 quantity squared equals 7. That's kind of set up in vertex form. If I would move the 7 back to the left as in subtract it, it would have a vertex of -3, -7. So we square root both sides. Don't forget the plus minus on that right-hand side. That gives us x plus 3 equals plus or minus root 7. Subtract 3 from both sides. We get x equals -3 plus or minus root 7. Notice the -3 goes in front of the plus minus. That means our two answers are x equals -3 plus root 7 or x equals -3 minus root 7. Next example, 3x squared plus 27 equals 0. Move the 27 to the other side. Then divide both sides by 3. We get x squared equals -9. Square root both sides. Don't forget the plus minus. And that gets us, well, 9 square root is 3. Square root of -1 is I. So that's x equals plus or minus 3i. We could write that just like I've got it written here, or we can write that as x equals 3i, comma, -3i. And here are the 8 I want you to practice on, and then check your answers with me.